Let's talk about what an elevation certificate is, why it matters, and when you might need one. Did you know that two homes sitting right next door to each other can have completely different flood insurance premiums? I'm not talking about a few dollars. I'm talking about potentially thousands of dollars every year. And the reason often comes down to one document that many homeowners have never heard of until they're buying or selling a home: the elevation certificate. If you want to understand how flood insurance works here in Jacksonville, this is information you'll want to know. I'm Amanda Bolwell, a Jacksonville realtor specializing in waterfront properties. Anyone can show you a waterfront home. I help you understand what it's like to own one. One thing I've learned is that waterfront living comes with a few extra considerations that buyers don't always think about until they're under contract. Flood insurance is one of them, and understanding elevation certificates can potentially save you a lot of money and a lot of surprises. Let's start with the basics. An elevation certificate is an official document prepared by a licensed surveyor, engineer, or architect. The certificate measures and documents how high your home sits relative to the expected flood level in that area. Think of it as a report card showing how elevated your home is compared to the flood risk. The certificate includes information such as the property location, the flood zone designation, the elevation of the structure, the elevation of the lowest floor, nearby ground elevations, and building characteristics. All of these measurements help insurance companies understand the actual flood risk associated with that property. The biggest reason is flood insurance. Many homeowners assume flood insurance pricing is based only on whether a property is in a flood zone, but that's only part of the story. How high your home sits compared to the area's base flood elevation can significantly impact what you pay. If your home is elevated above the expected flood level, your flood insurance premium may be lower. If it's below the level, premiums may be higher. In some cases, an elevation certificate can reveal that a property's actual risk is lower than originally assumed. That information can sometimes translate into meaningful savings. You'll often hear the term base flood elevation, or BFE. This is the height that floodwaters are expected to reach during what's commonly called a 100-year flood event. That doesn't mean flooding happens only once every 100 years. It means there is a 1% chance of that level of flooding occurring in any given year. When surveyors prepare an elevation certificate, they're comparing the home's elevation against that benchmark. The higher above the base flood elevation the home sits, generally the lower the flood risk. Not all homes necessarily need an elevation certificate. Many homeowners don't have one, and some properties may never need one. However, there are situations where having one becomes extremely valuable. For example, if you're purchasing a waterfront property, if your lender requires flood insurance, or if you're shopping for flood insurance and want the most accurate pricing. If you're challenging a flood zone determination, it's important then too. Or if you're selling a property and buyers have questions about flood insurance costs. I've had buyers ask for elevation certificates because they want a better understanding of the property's flood risk before making a decision. If you're lucky, the current owner may already have one. Many waterfront homeowners keep copies because they can be useful before insurance renewals or future sales. If one doesn't exist, you typically need to hire a licensed surveyor. The surveyor visits the property, takes measurements, and prepares the certificate. Costs vary depending on the property and the location, and many homeowners find the information well worth the investment, especially if it helps reduce insurance costs over time. Here in Jacksonville, elevation certificates come up frequently because we have so much waterfront property. Whether you're along the St. Johns River, the Intracoastal Waterway, marshfront properties, canal homes, or oceanfront areas, flood zones are simply part of the conversation. And here's something important. Being in a flood zone doesn't automatically mean a property is a bad investment. In fact, some of Jacksonville's most desired neighborhoods are located in flood zones. The key is understanding the actual risk and making informed decisions. That's where elevation certificates can provide valuable information. One misconception I hear often is, my home has never flooded, so I don't need to worry. Past performance doesn't necessarily determine future risk. Flood maps change, weather patterns change, insurance requirements change. Another misconception is, if I'm not on the water, flood insurance doesn't matter. The truth is, flooding can occur far away from rivers, marshes, and coastlines. Heavy rainfall, drainage issues, and storm events can impact properties throughout Northeast Florida. If you're buying a home, especially a waterfront property, don't just ask what the flood insurance costs today. Ask whether an elevation certificate exists. Ask what flood zone the property is in and how those insurance costs could change over time. The more information you have, the better decisions you'll make. Because waterfront living can be incredible, and understanding the details helps you enjoy it with confidence. If you're considering buying or selling a waterfront property in Jacksonville and have questions about flood zones, flood insurance, elevation certificates, docks, or waterfront living in general, I'd be happy to help. Leave a comment below with your questions or reach out to me directly. And if you found this video helpful, subscribe to the channel because every week I share practical advice about Jacksonville real estate, waterfront properties, and the things buyers and sellers need to know before making the next move. And I thank you so much for watching.